Part 43. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, UN Suya. Chapter 421. Chapter 421 Curse you to never catch up with Jun Chennai. Muniankai suddenly turned her face, stared at Hanzaja, and asked, "Your company is responsible for this advertisement, so you should have a way for me to get close to Brother Chennai's lounge, right?" After hearing what Muniankai said, Hanzaja frowned, looked at her with vigilance, waved his hand and said, "Come on, get rid of the thoughts in your mind quickly, I won't help you." Muniankai glared at Hanzaja, and then thought that since she wanted him to help, she'd better have a better attitude. Muniankai adjusted her expression and said to Hanzaja as gently as possible, "You won't regret helping me this time. I, Muniankai, am a person who knows how to repay kindness. If you have any difficulties in the future, I can do it, tell me and I can help you too." Hanzaja glanced at Muniankai nonchalantly and said, "I refuse." Muniankai's anger was instantly ignited. Why is this guy so ignorant? She discussed it with him nicely, but he still refused her so forcefully. "Hanzaja, will you die if you help me once?" Muniankai said angrily. Hanzaja stretched out slowly, smiled and said slowly, "I won't die, but I will be tired." Muniankai glared at him, "You're going to be exhausted?" Hanzaja chuckled and said nothing, just silently preparing to turn around and leave. He has noticed that there are several fair-skinned, beautiful and long-legged girls not far away who are giving him a discharge. Life is short, and having fun in the moment is king. Hanzaja just turned around and walked a few steps when someone suddenly grabbed the clothes on his back. Hanzaja frowned and said angrily, "Hey, what are you doing?" Muniankai said angrily, "Hanzaja, if you don't help me, I will yell and accuse you of molesting me." Muniankai was also driven into panic for a moment, and she said such shameful words in a flash of heat. She regretted it as soon as she finished speaking. Oh my God, her baggage is shattered all over the floor. She, Muniankai, would actually end up in this situation one day, and use her innocence to threaten Hanzaja. What a scumbag. After hearing this, Hanzaja turned around and looked at Muniankai in a funny way. He looked Muniankai up and down with his smiling eyes, and then mocked, "I said, of all the reasons, just find this one the least credible." Muniankai's face suddenly turned red. This guy is really... Hanzaja's eyes finally stayed on Muniankai's chest, and he said half-jokingly, "Muniankai, if you are very free, you might as well go home and eat more milk and papaya. If I were Jun Chennai, I don't like it." Before Hanzaja finished speaking, Muniankai was already furious with him. She was embarrassed and angry. Without thinking, Muniankai stepped forward, jumped up and gave Hanzaja a slap in the face. "Remember the explosion?" Hanzaja covered his head in pain, stared at Muniankai, and said speechlessly, "Why are you such a violent girl?" Muniankai rolled her eyes at Hanzaja and said, "I want you to take care of it, Hanzaja, you stinking scoundrel, I'll curse you." Muniankai paused, then thought for a second, and then continued, "I curse you for eating instant noodles without seasoning packets, plugging the toilet in the toilet, buying cans without pull tabs, buying milk tea without straws, and eating watermelon with watermelon seeds. I will always be jumped in line, and I will never be able to get on the bus." Muniankai said a series of words, and Hanzaja's face became darker and darker as he listened. Hanzaja's face was stiff and cold, he twitched the corner of his mouth and replied in a low voice, "I curse you for not being able to catch up with Jun Chennai for the rest of your life. Thanks to the little cuties Wufi Lingyu and Yinyu for the reward." End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, UN Suya. Chapter 422. Chapter 422, This Girl Can Still Cry. Hanzaja was just joking, after all, that girl Muniankai cursed him a series of times. However, he did not expect that as soon as he finished speaking those words, the brightness on Muniankai's face immediately dimmed. After a while, Muniankai's eye circles began to turn red, and later, she squatted on the ground in grievance, holding her head and crying. Hanzaja panicked, "My God, this girl Muniankai would still cry." Hanzaja was at a loss for a moment. He was the last person to comfort a girl. But he still has to take the blame for the trouble he caused. Hanzaja looked helplessly at Muniankai, who was squatting in front of him, crying so hard. "Hey, girl, are you really crying?" Muniankai ignored him. "Hey, no, you cry just by saying something." No response. Muniankai was just squatting aside and crying, her shoulders were shaking. It looked like she was crying very sadly. Hanzaja helplessly spread his hands. Why on earth did he want to provoke this Buddha? Okay, don't cry. In the worst case, I will show my kindness and help you get close to Junchanai. Muniankai was startled after hearing this, stopped sobbing, raised her head and glared at Hanzaja with red eyes from crying. "Don't worry about it, you nuisance." Muniankai stood up as she spoke, then turned around. Hanzaja followed her with helplessness on his face. "Hey, Miss Mu, can you be more generous? I have already said that I will help you, what else do you have to lose your temper about? I really don't understand creatures like women." However, no matter what Hanzaja said, Muniankai just ignored him and walked forward alone without looking back. Hanzaja had no choice but to cause trouble himself, so he had to follow her silently, fearing that she would do something stupid. Hanzaja hadn't followed a few steps when his cell phone rang. "Hey, what's the matter? Okay, I'll be right over." Hanzaja hung up the phone, stood there, and glanced at Muniankai, who was already some distance away from him. He frowned slightly. Nothing will happen to this girl, right? Hanzaja thought so, turned and left. Muniankai had just walked not far when Junchanai's filming came to an end and he entered the rest stage. Muniankai paused for a moment. Seeing that Junchanai was about to approach her, Muniankai took a deep breath, clenched her fists, and simply walked towards Junchanai without stopping. Past. Junchanai saw Muniankai's figure from a distance. Junchanai sighed helplessly, then stretched out his hand to pinch his eyebrows. Why is this girl still haunting her? Wasn't what he said before clear enough? Junchanai's manager also saw Muniankai, so he turned to Junchanai and said, "Young Master Jun, do you want me to stop you?" "Forget it, let her come over." Junchanai waved his hand, but she wanted to know what else Muniankai wanted to do. Junchanai simply stopped moving and just stood there waiting for Muniankai to approach. However, the expression on his face became increasingly ugly as Muniankai approached. Since no one stopped her, Muniankai quickly walked to Junchanai. Muniankai didn't seem to be affected at all by Junchanai's tough attitude before. It should be said that she never seemed to be affected. No matter how harsh words Junchanai had said before or how decisively he refused, the next time Muniankai saw Junchanai, she would still be in trouble. She always remained positive and acted as if nothing had happened. Sometimes, Junchanai really admires her unbeatable spirit. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 423. Chapter 423. He doesn't like her at all. Brother Chanai. Muniankai raised her head and stared at Junchanai with a face as bright as a summer flower. It seemed that in Muniankai's eyes, Junchanai was the kind of diamond that would shine when placed in a glass showcase. However, it's just out of reach. Junchanai responded to her with an indifferent face. "What are you doing here? Muniankai still tried her best to maintain her perfect smile and said, "Brother Chennai, there is a charity auction next month, and I would like to invite you to go with me." Jun Chennai frowned. He had heard about the so-called charity auction. It is said that the items at the auction are very strange, and it is also said that there are also Mr. R's old items at the auction. Jun Chennai naturally wanted to go. If nothing else, Mr. R's old things alone were enough to attract him. It's just that the time for the auction has never been set, and it has always been rumored. Whether it will happen or not, the outside world is not sure yet. Let's talk about it, I'm very busy. Jun Chennai said coldly and turned around to leave. Brother Chennai. The moment Jun Chennai turned around, Muniankai stopped him again. Jun Chennai paused and asked her without looking back, "Is there anything else?" Muniankai bit her lip, as if she had made some important decision, and said with each word spoken, "Can I talk to you alone?" Jun Chennai exhaled from the tip of his nose and replied in a nonchalant tone, "We have nothing to talk about." Muniankai pursed her lips, and hearing Jun Chennai's cold words, her heart completely turned cold at this moment. From the very beginning to now, she has always been a shameless person. It couldn't be more obvious that Jun Chennai didn't like her, and even disliked her, but she was just a bitch, and she just kept talking up to her again and again. But what can she do? She doesn't like Jun Chennai for a day or two. Marrying Jun Chennai has been her dream since childhood. She never thought about giving up. She thought that when there were no other girls around Jun Chennai, she would have a chance. She thought that since Xia Ying had Yu Lingfeng, Jun Chennai would be hers, but in the end, Jun Chennai was still so cold to her. Muniankai felt that no matter how passionate her heart was, it was frozen at this moment. No matter where Jun Chennai is, Muniankai will put down what he is doing and pursue his footsteps at all costs. However, Jun Chennai never cared about this. There are too many people who like him, Jun Chennai, and Jun Chennai will never lack suitors, both inside and outside the circle. But no matter which one it is, Muniankai is absolutely sure that she is definitely the one who likes him the most. Muniankai doesn't know if Jun Chennai knows this, maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't, but no matter what, Jun Chennai probably doesn't care, he just doesn't like her, not at all. Muniankai saw that Jun Chennai was about to leave, so Muniankai was so excited that she shouted directly behind Jun Chennai. "Jun Chennai, why are you ignoring me? I have liked you for so many years, why are you still unwilling to look at me? I am obviously the person who likes you the most, why do you treat me like this?" Muniankai, that's enough. Muniankai's words attracted the attention of the people present, and many people turned their eyes towards them. Jun Chennai felt annoyed or something, so he turned his head and interrupted Muniankai coldly. Remember to vote more for recommendations to get more updates. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 424. Chapter 424. It's time to give up. Muniankai's eyes were sparkling with tears. When she met Jun Chennai's eyes as ice as a cold pool, Muniankai's heart was completely cold and broken. Muniankai suddenly raised the corners of her mouth, revealing a bitter and stubborn smile. "Look, Muniankai, this is the boy you have liked for so long. No matter how sad and helpless you are crying in front of him, he will not even frown for you. His attitude and expression towards you have never changed. From the past to the present, you are not even as good as air in his eyes." Muniankai looked at all the people pointing and pointing around, as well as all kinds of disdainful looks and whispers. "Hey, who is that woman, why is she so shameless, isn't she the one who can imagine Mr. Jun?" That's right, all the girls who like young Master Jun have been queued up in outer space. Okay, this woman really overestimates her abilities and thinks she can win young Master Jun's favor just by being pretty. It's so funny she's still thinking about publicly confessing her feelings to Mr. June. Does she think that Mr. June is someone who has never seen the world and will fall for her? Muniankai couldn't help but tremble all over when she heard the words that were as sharp as knives around her. If it were her in the past, she would definitely come up and give someone a big slap in the face. But now, she actually has no confidence at all. What they said was indeed right. She had been shameless for so long, and it was indeed time for her to give up. It's really painful to like someone who can never like you. Muniankai suddenly ran away. She didn't want to cry in front of someone who didn't care about her. Or maybe Muniankai was just protecting her last bit of pride. I know that there is no future in doing this, but I just can't help it. Muniankai didn't run far, she just ran to a nearby bar and sat in front of the bar to drink. Muniankai learned smartly this time. She didn't come alone. She brought several bodyguards. She also knew how dangerous it was to get herself drunk alone in a foreign country, not to mention that after what happened last time, Muniankai didn't dare to be careless. The bodyguards stood beside Muniankai, watching their eldest daughter sullenly drinking. Muniankai's tears had dried up, and she seemed unable to cry anymore. She was just mechanically pouring wine into her stomach cup after cup. The bodyguards didn't dare to dissuade her. They knew Muniankai's temper best. All they could do was fulfill their obligations and responsibilities as bodyguards and protect her. Muniankai's hair was a mess, and her carefully made makeup was worn out. She was extremely decadent, and now she had completely lost her mind. Muniankai just said plausibly from time to time, "June Chennai, I don't like you anymore. Do you think my liking is the same as those girls' liking? I like you more than you like Xia Ying, I want to like it a lot more." Muniankai's words were incoherent by the end. She didn't know what she was talking about, but she always had something to say. Some of Hanzaja's good friends happened to be here to play. They heard that Hanzaja was also here, so they opened a private room to drink and reminisce. Boys chatted about girls, and there were always endless topics to talk about. I don't know who suggested it, but there is a competition to play boring games like who can get more girls' phone numbers, and whoever gets the least number gets to treat them to dinner. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 425. Chapter 425. The most beautiful girl in the bar. In short, a few energetic boys walked out of the box to hunt for women just for fun. Hanzaja himself is a playboy, so the friends around him are also like this. They often play this kind of game, and Hanzaja is naturally the one who always wins. A few young men with handsome faces, good temperaments, and wealthy family backgrounds stood in the crowd and naturally became the focus of the crowd. Most of the time, they don't have to do anything. Their famous brands and handsome appearance are enough to attract girls to flock to them. Hanzaja is so confident in himself that when others are catching prey one by one, Hanzaja sat on the sofa with his legs crossed and a leisurely look on his face, drinking, waiting for his prey to fall into his trap. Hanzaja lowered his head and played with his mobile phone, indifferent to everything around him. He has become accustomed to his way of winning so easily, and it works every time. More than half an hour later, the boys approached Hanzaja with a bunch of business cards in their hands. Then he saw a stack of thick business cards handed to Hanzaja by various girls on the table. The boys curled their lips, they were used to it. When Hanzaja saw them coming, he slowly raised his eyes and looked at them, and said with a wicked smile, "Who is the guest this time?" The boys looked at each other, then lowered their heads and counted the business cards in their hands. Two boys have the same number of business cards. "Ha, you two are the same, don't invite us together," a boy suggested. Hanzaja smiled and nodded in agreement. "Hey, wait a minute, look at the girl in the middle of the bar surrounded by a circle of bodyguards." One boy pointed at Muniankai and said to another boy, "How about this?" Whoever wants that girl's business card will be treated to a dinner. Good. So, two boys with the same number of business cards started a new round of gambling. Hansaja was non-committal and did not raise his head to look at the girl they were talking about. He just stared at his mobile phone the whole time. That girl is quite beautiful, but the bodyguards around her are too fierce. I tried to get close to her once, but the bodyguard almost broke my arm. A boy complained. I also discovered that that girl is the most beautiful girl in the bar today. Hansaja finally became somewhat interested as he listened to what they were saying. He has always been interested in beautiful women, so when he heard the words "the most beautiful," his eyes immediately left the phone screen. What girl? Hansaja looked up at them. Here, Mr. Han, that's the girl in front of the bar surrounded by 4 bodyguards. Hansaja looked in the direction of their fingers, and then fixed his gaze on Muniankai. Hansaja's eyes darkened, and his expression suddenly changed. Isn't that Muniankai? Muniankai was so drunk that she couldn't lift her head, but she kept ordering wine and pouring it into her mouth. Although the whole person seemed to be in a sluggish state, Muniankai's exquisite facial features and slim figure were still fascinating. Even though she looks so sloppy, she is still the most beautiful girl in the bar. Hansaja stood up, stretched out his long legs expressionlessly, and walked towards Muniankai. The boys on the side were stunned. Is Mr. Han planning to do it himself? Thanks to the little cuties and 15654 and Xingyuang Xiang depend for their rewards. Please vote for recommendations. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 426. Chapter 426 Send her back to the country. Hansaja approached Muniankai and was stopped by the bodyguard. Hansaja rolled his eyes and said angrily, I said, if you really want to protect your eldest lady, don't let her drink. The way she drinks, is she planning to die suddenly? The bodyguards looked at each other, and they thought so, but how could they care about Muniankai? Hansaja naturally understood the meaning in their eyes, so he said, let me tell her, if you are worried, just watch from the side. No matter how hard I try, I can't beat the 4 of you. Well-trained professional bodyguards. The bodyguards took it seriously when they heard this, and the boy was talking to their eldest lady just now. It seemed that he was an acquaintance. So after careful consideration, they agreed to Hansaja's proposal and gave him a wide path. Hansaja approached Muniankai. By this time, Hansaja's group of friends were stunned. As expected of Mr. Han, he is a cow. In just a few words, he successfully convinced the bodyguard and got close to the beautiful woman. Just as Muniankai was about to drink a glass of wine, she suddenly lifted it into the air and was snatched away by a strong hand. Muniankai turned angrily and looked at the person who came, Hansaja, with a serious face. Hansaja's eyes darkened and he looked at Muniankai with a look of contempt. Give me back the wine. Muniankai gritted her teeth and said angrily. Ification. Hansaja's words were very soft, but full of unexplainable determination. Hansaja, are you definitely going against me? Hansaja raised his lips and sneered, are you still drunk? Do you still know who I am? Muniankai glared at him, get out of my way and don't disturb my drinking. However, what Hansaja did was to lift up all the wine in front of Muniankai and drink it all without leaving a drop for her. He also told the bartender not to serve her any more drinks. Hansaja, Muniankai gritted her teeth and stared at him, her eyes red, are you sick? Why don't you let me drink? Hansaja looked at Muniankai with a cold face. When did you, Muniankai, become so spineless? Your confession to Jun Chennai I was rejected? So you came here to get drunk? Do you think there is no danger with a few bodyguards? You are in country F now. The security in country F is not like that in China. Country. You are allowed to carry guns here. If you are attracted by some gangsters, your bodyguards are really useless. Mu Niankai sneered coldly, so what? At worst, I will perish together with them. Hanzija darkened his face and said, you are really not afraid of death. Give me wine. Mu Niankai said to the bartender. Don't give it to her. Hanzija roared. Mu Niankai glared at him. Hanzija, do you have? Before Mu Niankai could finish her words, she was suddenly picked up by Hanzija and carried directly on his shoulders. The bodyguards were also stunned, and Hanzija's friends opened their eyes wide. What? Is it getting more exciting? You let me go, what are you going to do? Mu Niankai kept beating Hanzija's back. Hanzija kept his face expressionless. He took out his mobile phone very calmly with one hand and made a call. Jeffrey, send a helicopter over. After saying that, Hanzija hung up the phone and said to the bodyguards following closely behind him, send your eldest lady back to the country and take good care of her. Good. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 427. Chapter 427 fell asleep on him. The bodyguards were stunned. Who is this person? How dare you do this to their eldest lady? Aren't you afraid that their eldest lady will cause trouble for him when she wakes up? Mu Niankai kept beating Hanzija on the back, making noisy noises all the way, but Hanzija never made a sound, just walked in the direction of the helicopter with long legs and firm steps. After a while, Hanzija found that the little woman behind him actually became quiet, and soon there was the sound of even breathing. This girl actually fell asleep on him. Hanzija's face turned cold, but he still didn't lose his temper. Hanzija placed Mu Niankai on the seat, and just as he was about to stand up and leave, Mu Niankai suddenly reached out and hooked Hanzija's neck. Before Hanzija realized what had happened, a soft touch spread from his lips. Come over. A fair and delicate girl's face enlarged in Hanzija's eyes. Hanzija stared at the sleepy Mu Niankai in front of him with wide eyes. This girl actually kissed him forcefully while she was drunk. Hanzija pushed Mu Niankai away and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand angrily. Hanzija's eyes fell on the sleepy Mu Niankai, and even he didn't realize that his eyes suddenly had a complex tenderness. At that moment, Mu Niankai muttered something. Hanzija came closer out of curiosity, but heard her saying something like Brother Chennai. Hanzija's face turned dark immediately. This girl stole his first kiss and actually regarded him as someone else's substitute. Hanzija said that he couldn't bear it, so Hanzija angrily turned around and left without looking back. The bodyguards saw the scene in their eyes, but they did not dare to breathe. Although the eldest lady was kissed, it seemed that the eldest lady was the one who took the initiative, so they seemed to have no reason to trouble Hanzija. When Hanzija returned to the bar, he was naturally teased by his group of friends. But before they could say a few words, Hanzija left angrily without saying a word. A boy asked in confusion, "What's wrong with Mr. Han? Is he in trouble? I don't understand. Didn't you just carry a beautiful woman out? Did you get rejected?" Xia Ying came to Vienna, Austria. Just like the last time she came here, this city of music always brings her full of surprises. When Xia Ying arrived at the airport, Modzai and Stefan were waiting for him, followed by a group of bodyguards and servants. Seeing Xia Ying, Modexi waved to him very kindly. Stefan had been standing aside expressionlessly. His eyes that had no focus at first began to focus on Xia Ying after seeing her. It is rare for Stefan to be interested in someone, and Xia Ying is such a rare person. Other than Modzai, the person Stefan has seen the most is Xia Ying. He would never stare at other people like this. Xia Ying was an accident. Xia Ying wore a light pink windbreaker, a scarf, and a hat, wrapping herself tightly, revealing her two big bright eyes and smiling at Modzi and Stefan. After a brief exchange of greetings with Modexi, Xia Ying got in the car and prepared to go to Modexi's villa. Since Stefan became Morderxi's close disciple, he has been living in Morderzi's house and only goes home to visit during the New Year and holidays. In Stefan's eyes, Modzi is like his relative, and Modzi's home is naturally his second home. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 428. Chapter 428. He will slowly accept you. Xia Ying tried to talk to Stefan because she noticed Stefan's gaze intentionally or unintentionally. However, as before, Stefan had no intention of communicating with her. Mordex saw it from the side and just smiled faintly and said to Xia Ying in a low voice, "Give Stefan some time, he will slowly accept you." Xia Ying looked at Modexi's amiable smile, smiled and nodded. For Modzi, it is not easy for him that Stefan is willing to go out with him to pick up Xia Ying. Xia Ying was slightly surprised after arriving at Modzi's luxurious villa. Modzi's home is very large and luxurious, and more importantly, his home has a very strong musical atmosphere. As soon as Xia Ying entered the door, she saw several special pianos. Some other furniture and furnishings are also in the shape of musical notes and musical instruments. Xia Ying's little goo bugs sneakily poked their little heads out of the bell and looked around curiously. They also feel very good about the new environment. Xia Ying had told them before that they were going to live in a new place for a while. So they were all mentally prepared, and now it seems that they are quite satisfied with this new place. You should have a good rest first, there is a concert to attend in the evening. Mordex said to Xia Ying, and then the maid led Xia Ying to her room. Modersi looked at Xia Ying's back, then walked up to Stefan and asked him in a low voice, "Don't you really want to get to know her? Why don't you talk to her?" Stefan pursed his lips and did not answer. A pair of turquoise eyes with a soft luster glanced at Xia Ying's back silently. Seeing that he didn't answer, Modzi stopped asking questions. But probably, he knows the answer. Xia Ying came to her room. Modexi had already sent people to decorate it carefully. The whole room felt like a warm princess room. The soft main color of powder blue, with lace and lace taking up the main theme, Xia Ying quite likes this girly room. Perhaps while watching the video, Modzi discovered that Xia Ying had many dolls in her room, so he knew that she liked these things. So in this room, Modexi also placed many cartoon dolls that were only in Xia Ying Huaguo's room before. Mordezi was so attentive, Xia Ying couldn't help but feel warmed by his small details. Xia Ying was indeed tired after such a long journey, so she took a bath, changed into comfortable pajamas, and prepared to have a good rest. Xia Ying was lying on the bed, and the bell on her bracelet was glowing green, as if the little bugs were blinking and looking at the room curiously. Xia Ying stared at them and said, "We will live here for more than 2 weeks. During this time, you should be good and don't run around or scare people." Xia Ying spoke to the little goo insects in a gentle voice as much as possible. The little goo bugs blinked in unison and responded to Xia Ying obediently. "Go to sleep." Xia Ying closed the curtains in the room, turned off the lights, and then huddled under the quilt. Not long after, Xia Ying fell asleep sweetly. The smallest little goo insect, Xiaoju, saw that Xia Ying was sleeping and was about to fly out to take a look. But as soon as he poked his head out, he was discovered by other goo insects and taught him a lesson. Xiaoju had no choice but to fly back silently with his head hanging down. Thanks to the little cuties 15915, 15987, 15835, Don/T believe, Little Princess Green, what a reward. After reading the mail in the next book evaluation area, Stefan's little cuteness was actually higher than the votes of the Royal Lingfeng Demon King. In PK, please vote for recommendation. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 429. Chapter 429. The Person Who Surpasses Stefan. It was already afternoon when Xia Ying woke up. After simply dressing up, Xia Ying went downstairs. Modexi was talking to someone on the phone in the living room downstairs. He was speaking in German, which Xia Ying couldn't understand. Xia Ying sat quietly aside, waiting for Modzai to make a call. Xia Ying looked around and seemed to not see Stefan anymore. Modexi hung up the phone, walked towards Xia Ying, and then waved to the maids on the side, who then walked towards them carrying a rose-red gift box. Modzi smiled and said to Xia Ying, "After dinner later, you can put on this dress and we will go to the concert." "Good." Xia Ying took the dress and nodded. After dinner, Xia Ying changed into a dress. It was a sapphire blue diamond-encrusted dress. The waist-cinching design made Xia Ying's figure slim and graceful and very charming. Xia Ying put on simple light makeup, and her whole person looked fairy-like, pure and clean. On the way, Xia Ying heard Modexi's words and realized that they were going to the Vienna Golden Hall. Today it is said that the Royal Music Ensemble will perform, and as a special guest, Stefan will have an exclusive piano performance. This is Xia Ying's first time to go to the Golden Hall to watch a concert, so it is inevitable that she will be a little excited along the way. When Xia Ying arrived at the scene, she took a long, deep breath. The Golden Hall was even more luxurious and glorious than what she saw in the pictures. As one of the 5 most famous concert halls in the world, it has always been coveted by the music industry. The Golden Hall is an Italian Renaissance-style building with yellow and red exterior walls. There are many statues of music goddesses erected on the roof, which is quaint and unique. Xia Ying looked around excitedly. Modexi looked at Xia Ying with a smile and said, "This music group is the most famous orchestra in Austria. You will not be disappointed." Yeah. Xia Ying nodded vigorously. As a country of music, Austria naturally has many celebrities in the music industry. Xia Ying is full of expectations for tonight's performance. Not only Xia Ying, the little goo insects were also looking around curiously inside the bell, full of strong interest in what was going to happen next. When Xia Ying was practicing music at home, the little bugs were very excited one by one. Now, what they were about to hear was a symphony from a world-famous orchestra. The little bugs were so happy that they wanted to get out of the bell to find out. Throughout the night, Xia Ying was immersed in the baptism of music. The feeling of listening to the concert in the Golden Hall was indeed extremely wonderful. Xia Ying has attended many concerts, and I have to say that this is the most unforgettable one. At the end of the concert, there was a personal piano solo by Stefan as a special guest. Stefan's piano skills are currently unrivaled among the younger generation in the music industry. He is a genius in music, and he is always improving. The only person who can surpass today's Stefan is tomorrow's Stefan. Even Morderzy once praised without hesitation that Stefan was the person with the highest musical talent he had ever seen in his life. His musical talent even surpassed that of Morderzy when he was young. Modzi said that Stefan was born for music. Stefan sat in front of the piano, quietly like a beautiful prince in a fairy tale. Stefan gently raised his hand and placed it on the piano keys. Everyone in the audience held their breath. Thanks to the little cutie, stay in the memories and look at the past, Shwelidu smile, and Kikiao for the rewards. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 430. Chapter 430, Born Like a Summer Flower. From the first note, Stefan captured the hearts of the audience. Xia Ying has never heard this piece of music by Stefan, but this piece of music is surprisingly good. The style of the song is melodious and light, but there is a hint of sadness at the end. It gives people a contradictory feeling of working hard and feeling sorry for themselves. In this song, some people feel warmth and love, while others feel the indifference of the world. In short, this piece is extremely contradictory. Xia Ying didn't know what kind of mentality Stefan had when playing this piece of music. She only knew that Stefan in front of the piano was really beautiful to the extreme. After Stefan played the last note, everything seemed just right and left people nostalgic. Stefan wore a black and white dress and bowed to the audience. What do you think of Stefan's new song, Life is Like a Summer Flower? Mo Dexy, who was beside Xia Ying, leaned forward slightly and asked Xia Ying. Xia Ying finally recovered from the aftertaste of the music. Xia Ying nodded her head very hard and praised, "It's great. This is the most beautiful music I have heard this year." Modarksai narrowed his eyes and smiled, "Me too." As he spoke, Stefan had already walked to Madzai and Xia Ying and sat down. Xia Ying cast a stunning look at Stefan. Stefan just glanced at Xia Ying slightly without making any other expression. After listening to the concert, Xia Ying and the others got in the car to go back. Xia Ying actually wanted to ask Stefan about the inspiration for that piece of music, and what kind of mood he had in mind when he wrote the piece. Born like a summer flower, such a beautiful name, the meaning of this song must also be extraordinary. However, Xia Ying knew that Stefan was probably unwilling to talk to her. Xia Ying endured it all the way, patiently wanting to know, and suppressing her expression of expectation and excitement. After dinner, Stefan went to the piano room alone and started playing the piano. Xia Ying followed him, leaning to the side, silently watching him play the piano. At this time, the attention of the little goo bugs was also attracted by Stefan, and they kept staring at the prince-like young man. Xia Ying lowered her head and raised her hand to glance at the little goo insect, and smiled softly, "You also like Stefan's music, right?" The little goo insects blinked their eyes as a reply. Xia Ying looked at Stefan's handsome and refined profile. She always felt that Stefan looked the most youthful and youthful only in front of music. Stefan was incomplete without music. Normally, Stefan's face often showed sadness, but only when facing music, Xia Ying could glimpse a little joy in the young man's eyes. Xia Ying raised the corners of her mouth, revealing a faint smile. However, just as she was about to leave, Stefan suddenly looked up at her. Xia Ying was startled, her eyes seemed to be filled with some kind of expectation. Xia Ying frowned, and Stefan suddenly stood up, moved to one side, and waved to Xia Ying, motioning for her to come over. Xia Ying then realized that Stefan was inviting her to perform a four-handed bomb attack. It was a rare opportunity for Stefan to take the initiative to get close to her, and since the other party was Stefan, Xia Ying seemed to have no reason to refuse him. Xia Ying walked towards him with a smile. Ahaha, don't get me wrong, Xia Ying regards Stefan as her younger brother. Thank you to the little cutie looking down at the world like a queen, Fikig, Sankai and 18983 for the rewards. End of this chapter.